What's up, everybody? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Today we got TruthLoaders, the journalists and hosts of TruthLoaders. Real quick, just remind you that you can go on YouTube, you can go on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, all the places where you can get podcasts, and subscribe to our podcast so that way you can kind of keep updated on every new episode. Thanks again, guys, for taking your time. TruthLoaders are calling me from the future because it's Friday afternoon there. They're calling me from the UK. So I'll basically, I could do a good job describing them, but I think they'll do a better job describing kind of what you do. Can you just, for people who don't know who you guys are, can you kind of give like a brief description of, what TruthLoaders is all about and what topics and stuff do you guys talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically an alternative news channel, and we try to cover stories that are not getting enough coverage or no coverage at all in the media over here, which is generally a good indication that it's not getting enough coverage anywhere. And sometimes that'll just be things that are happening right now. Sometimes it's things that have happened in the past but are still affecting events today. Sometimes it's explanations of things that people write off as conspiracy theories. Sometimes, we do a bit of, we do a lot of stuff. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, you hit on some science stuff too, right? You guys hit. I mean, I'm a big fan of your guys because I know I would look for certain information online, like stuff on the Carlisle group or whatever, or what's going on in the Middle East with just all the revolutions and rebelling and all that stuff. And you guys always had great videos. You guys always had like a really good insight on it, and it seems like internet's going to be the next wave of alternative media. It seems like the thing about internet is that we can go there, we can kind of get a lot of we had James Corbett on last year, and I don't know if you guys know familiar with his work, but he's another alternative media guy, all sponsored by fans, and the nice thing about stuff like that is that it's not. And the other thing too is it seems like a lot of Americans have gotten smarter with their media or news, and they're going to RT, Russian television, and Al Jazeera or you guys or James Corbett. It's people who aren't selling us propaganda, I guess you can say. I think it seems like the younger generation seems like they don't really care about CNN or Fox News or MSNBC because they're just trying to sell you a side, their point of view, and it's not really the real news. They focus on Bieber and Duck Dynasty and all this other stuff, and it's like that stuff's you're supposed to watch entertainment TV for that. You aren't that's not what we should get on CNN, especially with there's no lack of news these days. I mean, there's always something. It seems like every day there's something going on there. If it's Ukraine, if it's Fukushima, if it's whatever, recently the TPP, that partnership, that Trans-Pacific Partnership, like there always seems like there's something that we should be focused on or paying attention to going on. So it's amazing that like CNN could really focus on hard-hitting news, but they don't, and so
Yeah.
I think alternative news like you guys and it's for people who haven't checked them out, definitely check them out. You can Google them, TruthLoader, it's all one word, and you'll find their videos. They have great insight. I mean, you guys had one of my favorite videos on the Carlisle group. You really broke it down and focused on all the links to the Bin Ladens and the Bush family and how they profited after September 11th and all that stuff. So how is it in the UK? Do you guys? I mean, I know you have BBC, but does it seem like you also have to go to the internet and stuff like that for kind of more hard-hitting news and really getting the facts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. So, well, first of all, like James Corbett, yeah, we do know him well. We had him on our channel a while
that's
back.
right. Yeah.
And in terms of internet news, I think what that allows people to do is go to multiple different sources. And because there's kind of a mainstream narrative in every single country where most of the media organizations will be telling you exactly the same thing, and it's kind of a lot of the time you find that they're just parroting the government line, and I think what the internet has allowed people to do is to go to various different sources and find out what other people are saying about the same events. And I don't think it's necessarily true to say that any of them are right or wrong. It's just there are different opinions. you know, and I think that's the great thing that the internet has allowed. And yeah,
Are you afraid of something like SOPA or net neutrality, or that big conversation about net
yeah,
neutrality?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, net neutrality seems really bizarre to me. The idea that you can promote various internet companies will be able to promote certain brands, they can slow down, right? They can slow down other brands that they're not sponsored by.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, like you'd be paying for bandwidth. So Google or YouTube or whatever could pay more to make their sites go faster, and then people who can't afford it would basically be a bidding contest for whose websites would be faster, which is kind of unfair because right now we kind of got used to the way things are now, and it's not like we're dealing with small companies; they're big corporations. So it's not like Verizon or whoever these big bandwidth companies are need the money. They don't need the money. They're just trying to obviously trying to squeeze more money out, and so that's yeah, and that's one thing I think right now our best line of defense is the internet. I know that you guys get some of some clips from certain things that go on in Syria and stuff like that from like the internet, and I think that that's awesome. I think that sometimes getting the ability that we have today to record something with our phone and 2 seconds later it's online, and get that information and get that video out. I think it's important because unfortunately, the mainstream media, they don't have the ability to just kind of cover things. Obviously, they have sponsors, they have all these things, they have guidelines they have to stick within, and so you never really know. I don't know if you're familiar with Amber Lyons, but she worked for CNN, and she had a problem where she did this documentary in Bahrain that never got aired, and then come to find out, Bahrain was what's paying CNN or paying them. So it just things like that happen. They don't have the same kind of conversations that we have, and there are guidelines on what they can and cannot say. And what influenced you guys? I know you guys have been around since what, early 2013 or late 2012?
Yeah, it was late
Yeah.
2012. I think it was in November.
Yeah, November 2012 is when we officially launched, so.
And how did you guys get involved in this? What motivated you? Was it something in the news? Is a specific topic or issue that seems to kind of really motivate you more than others? Like if it's Monsanto, if it's foreign policy, what was it that said, hey, I want to do something more? Or were you guys always journalists? Is that something you always
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
do?
Well, I mean, I've been a journalist for about 5 years now. Laura's straight out of was it
Like journalism college. I'd worked at a few places, but I'd actually worked for quite a few mainstream media outlets actually. And when I was there, I felt quite frustrated by the fact that their journalists might want to cover stories. It's not that their journalists are good journalists, but like you say, they're really restricted by sponsorship and time, even just airtime and also what the pressure they're getting from above and also just the agenda that's being set by the audience and by politicians and things like that they just feel, even if they want to cover stories, that they just feel like they can't cover them. So it's great on TruthLoader because we basically get to decide what we want to cover, and our viewers help us make those decisions as well. They give us suggestions, and yeah, we base a lot of our stories on suggestions viewers have given us actually.
And there's one thing, like we always like to be perfectly honest with people. The people who the company that owns our channel is ITN, which would be a mainstream media organization. But they
kind of good
to start off with, they were interested in what we were doing, but never exerted any influence over what we're doing. And now they're kind of just leaving us to it. They've seen that it's been a success, and occasionally will ask us what we're doing, but never sort of attend any of our editorial meetings or where we decide what we're going to do. It's just the four of us are just sitting there and have a chat about what we want to do, what we think is important, and what our viewers have suggested, and then we just get on with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's cool because now we do have the ability to kind of bypass, TV. You can get, apps on your phone, the RT app or the Young Turks app or whatever, or just, almost every every morning when I have coffee, when your guys' channel is one of the channels I check, just kind of see what you guys updated and keep up with current events. And there's no reason to watch mainstream media anymore. It's just we have the capability of getting internet on our TVs and on our PlayStations and all this stuff. So because of it, I almost feel like eventually, because I think a lot of the ratings are still from like you're at the dentist's office and the CNN's on the background, in the background on the TV. I think that's where a lot of the ratings are, or there are older people, But I think a lot of the younger generation, we're not that interested in the current events that they kind of they show. It seems boring. It doesn't seem like it gets to the hard-hitting facts. And I think younger people would care more about what's going on if we're getting the honest truth. If we knew what was going on with our food, if we knew what was going on with foreign policy, how there's a lot of it is caused by us, there's a good quote that I like. I don't remember who to give credit to, but the next war starts when the people who remember the last one are gone. And that's what it seems like. It seems like the young generation comes, and then we kind of forget about our past. And that's why I think history is so important. Like, our school system here sucks. And we're getting people prepared for, like, Wall Street and just to work, but we're not really provoking thought or getting people to think and question things. That's why I like your theme, challenge everything, because I think that's kind of the way you have to look at things. Not so much just because you want to be a jerk and you want to challenge everything, but I think you should question everything, even if your own beliefs. I mean, this podcast, we've had some people on that I don't necessarily agree with all their views, but I think that it's important to show that we can have conversations even if you disagree with it. Slavery, women's rights. I mean, that all started with somebody saying this is what we're conditioned to believe is the norm, but we questioned it, and and then that's how it sparks progress. So I think it definitely is important to kind of have that type of thinking of, just don't believe everything you hear, and even question your own beliefs and where you're coming from, and stuff like that. With the current events, is there well, actually, one thing I want to bring up, because we're talking about journalists. Obviously, you guys know what happened to Michael Hastings and stuff like that, and journalists being spied on. And you guys ever afraid of that, of like some of the topics you guys hit? Because I don't know how the UK is, like how strict they are on their journalists. But obviously in America, that's one thing that I think kind of sparks journalists to maybe not cross a line, because of obviously stories like Manning and Snowden and Michael Hastings and all these people that basically either get spied on or something crazy happens to them. And you ever have that fear of like maybe you shouldn't hit certain topics or maybe don't go too deep in a story because of what you might find?
No, the main thing that I worry about is getting sued if I get something wrong, because the UK, the worst thing you have here is really strict libel laws. So if we say something about a specific company or a specific individual that is wrong, and they think it can affect their livelihood or their profit margins or whatever, that's the thing that we worry about most, and that's down to us having very, very tight laws. You get people from all over the world coming to the UK to sue people. It's called like libel tourism, and they're actually trying to crack down on that a bit now. But so the law's the main thing that we have to worry about in terms of anything happening to us. No, it's not something I've ever really considered.
Although I think Phil, who used to work on TruthLoader, you might remember him. I think someone once said that to him, didn't they, in like a Reddit forum or something?
Yeah. He had to confirm that he had no intention of taking his own life, but that was just on Reddit. It was kind of yeah. I mean, you see stuff like Michael Hastings, and it looks very, very suspicious, right? But no, personally, I've never had anything like that. The worst thing that I've ever had was some woman phoning up and threatening to kill me. But I think she thought I was somebody else. So yeah, I don't know what that was all about. She sounded drunk.
What got you guys into journalism? Was there any documentary? I know it's a question I kind of ask a lot of people who are in like alternative media and stuff like that. It's just I'm always really curious, like what was the point in their lives, or what was there? Maybe it wasn't maybe it was more gradual. It wasn't something in one moment, but like for either one of you guys, was there a moment in your life where a story really like hit you personally, or a documentary or a book you read really, you know, you looked at it and you're like, wow, like there's more to the world than meets the eye, and there's bigger issues out there that we should be focused on, and we should, you know, and maybe motivate you to kind of feel like, you know, doing your part, because obviously the cool thing about your job is that you guys get to do something obviously you probably enjoy, but the other thing, you're actually you're making a difference. I mean, you're putting you're sparking conversation, you're sparking thought, and you're putting focus on stories that wouldn't necessarily maybe get focused. So was there any moment in your time, well, I mean, maybe it was a thing as when you guys were kids, you thought, hey, when I grow up I want to be a journalist, but was it something like that, or was it something that happened in your life, or a story, or some conflict, or you know, the 7/7 thing? I know here September 11th was our big event, where I think it opened a lot of eyes to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people started questioning things and realizing that maybe there is a bigger plan, or maybe there is some fuckery going around, you know, there's something going on that doesn't seem right, and I think that motivated some people to kind of do something. In your lives, was there anything?
Well, yeah, I did have the whole being like growing up and wanting to be a journalist, but yeah, I remember when I think I must have been 14 or 15, and I remember when the US invaded Iraq, and I remember watching it on TV at home, and well, he's actually an ITN journalist now, the same company that we work for, but he's called Raghi Omar, and he was working for the BBC at the time, and then he moved to Al Jazeera because he didn't agree with the BBC's coverage of it. And I just remember him covering Iraq. And even though I was quite young and didn't really know that as much about, you know, politics and stuff as I do now, even then I could tell that invading Iraq was like the most ridiculous decision in the world. So yeah, I think that was the first moment when I really thought that I wanted to be a journalist and cover international politics. And yeah, because I thought, if I'm 15 and I know that this is a stupid idea, why doesn't everyone else know it?
Sorry, something's just cropped up on our computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No big deal. But you, Adam, was it something similar, or?
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm a bit older than Laura, so I mean, I think, I mean, Iraq was kind of like the first major one, right? You see like 1 million people out on the streets of London, and yeah, you know, and that's the 1 million people who could make it to that march, and yet the government went to war anyway. Told us it was all about removing an evil dictator who had weapons of mass destruction that he could fire in 45 minutes, and everybody there knows it's a lie, and everybody knows it was for oil, and yet they still went ahead with it anyway. So that was like the first big one. But I guess in terms of like documentaries and stuff like that, I think the first guy that really sort of got me into questioning lots of different things, or having maybe like a different take on stories, was Adam Curtis, probably. I don't know if you've seen any of his documentaries. He did things like The Power of Nightmares and All Looked Over by Machines of Love and Grace, and they're absolutely brilliant documentaries. So I guess he'd probably be like the person that a lot of us aspire to sort of have work that's as good as his. But
Power of Nightmares.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to check those out, because I'm always suggesting documentaries on this show, because I think it seems like reality is crazier than fiction. You know, it's like you could watch a suspense thriller movie, and then you watch some documentary, and the storyline with corruption and everything is even crazier than the made up story. So it is pretty insane, and I think that documentaries are awesome, because it kind of we all have like ADD. If I'm on the internet, I'm like constantly going from one thing to another, and it just like next thing you know, you're on the computer for like an hour and you didn't consume any of that information because you're just like looking at too many things. And the nice thing about documentaries, it kind of focuses on one topic, and you're like, okay, I can sit down and kind of has my attention. But I think your show works like for the opposite reason. I think it works because people do have ADD, and you guys do kind of short movies, and it's easier for people to consume. You know, because sometimes it's hard. I'll tell people, hey, watch this documentary, and people will be like, I don't have that too much time, or or I
Yeah.
can't focus on one thing for that long. And it's good because you guys do shorter movies or shorter videos and focus on one topic at a time. And
Yeah, that was kind of one of the things we wanted to do, because like you see documentaries online, like things like the Zeitgeist movement. Yeah, the Zeitgeist films,
they're like 3 hours
incredibly interesting. But yeah. Well, manufacturing consent is one that we've done recently.
with Noam Chomsky.
Which
Yeah,
is which is like how long is that? It's a good couple of hours long.
yeah.
And we condensed it down, and there's not as much information in our videos as there are obviously in that long documentary, but it's like an introduction.
Exactly. It's like
And
a stepping stone. Like you can watch your videos, and then from there you can Google and research other things. And
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Um,
that's a well, to go back to the because before I forget, the Iraq thing. One thing that I think a lot of people from the U.S. don't realize is that you guys were kind of sold the same bullshit that we were sold. Like
Yeah.
you got. I mean, it was very your situation in the U.K. from like my understanding of it. We had Guy Evans from Smells Like Teen Human Spirit podcast on, and he's from Wales, and he was telling me similar thing. Like that was a big thing to him, was that like he's like, we're obviously being sold BS. He's like this, and we win anyways. And obviously there was never any proof of weapons of mass destruction and whatnot. And I think the scary thing about like creating like a terrorist is that we're always fighting terrorists, and there's no real there's never you never win that battle, because it's just a constant made up threat. So you can just keep invading, keep spending money on countries or I mean invading countries, and saying we're fighting terrorism, and at the end of the day, like it's not like fighting the Soviet Union or whatever, where you can say, okay, we won this war and we move on. It's this thing where we just constantly keep spending money, and you just use kind of I mean, and I hate to admit it, but let's be honest, like it seems like the U.S. only invades Muslim countries, and then the Muslim thing. I mean, and I know the U.K. kind of has, because I listen to some British artists, and like Low Key, and he's a rapper or whatnot, and Enter Shikari, who's a metal band, and one thing you seem like you hear a lot is like it seems like there's a lot of racism towards Muslims in the UK. And is that something that I know in the U.S. it kind of seems like some of our fear, or not our fear, because I'm not grouped in that, but the fear of some people here of Muslims it almost seems like it's manufactured by media and just kind of, I mean, you get people who are just every time we talk about invading a Middle Eastern country, we're just like, yeah, screw them. And I'm just like, we barely understand what's going on there. I try to understand, and I have very little understanding of all the conflicts. And you get Christians who hate Middle Eastern people, but I'm like, what? There's Christians in the Middle East. I'm like, it makes no sense. And it seems like, we just have this very broad, general idea of what we think the Middle East is. And really, we can't even begin to understand how old some of the conflicts are and stuff like that. And I definitely feel like some of our fear of terrorists, well, the only thing is Syria. It seems like alternative media worked. Like people were getting real information out, and like we didn't invade that country. But for the most part, it seems like it's pretty easy to just say, hey, we're invading this Middle Eastern country, and because everybody's so afraid of Muslims because of the media and stuff like that, and just assuming that everybody's a terrorist. I think that it's just one of those things where I think a lot of it is manufactured by the media, and I think we can't group people. If a Christian blows up an abortion clinic, we can't hate all Christians and blame all Christians. It's one radical person. It's one extremist. And but to go back to my initial point before I go on a rant, but it seems like the UK kind of has a similar thing. I've seen a lot of debates and stuff, and even like Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, like their point of views on foreign policy seem a little extreme. It seems like it seems like they're okay with like just blowing up Muslim countries. Is this just I guess the wrong view of how the UK is? Is it not as serious as a thing as it seems? Or
No, I don't know. So I mean, there is certainly a problem with racism here in some parts of the country. In some, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's as widespread as all that, but and I'd say it's partly down to oversimplification in the media. So it's kind of, I don't know how many people would know the difference between, say, like Shia Islam or Sunni Islam, or know what an Alawite is, despite the fact that Syria is in the news quite often. Um, and I'd say it's also partly down to the financial collapse in 2008. It's like any time when people are hard up, it's they rush to extreme views. And I guess the fact that so many people are struggling at the moment has pushed them out to you try and blame someone, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a big part of it. I think we try to. I think it's kind of capitalizing on anger. I think when like something like September 11th happened, or in the UK the 7/7 attacks, like I feel like the government they understand that when people are angry, we don't think logically, we think emotionally, and you can kind of capitalize on that. You can capitalize on people being upset, and just you put a face on who the threat is, and then you say, yes, we're gonna invade that country to get these people, and then we're like, yeah, yeah, and it's all patriotic, and I think they capitalize on that. I forget which American politician said that you never let a travesty go to waste, or something like that. Something like
I'm reading the shock doctrine at the moment, and that's pretty much I mean, that seems to be one of the major things, is capitalize on some horrific event, and then you can pretty much convince people to do whatever you want.
Well, it's similar to the video I just saw recently with Laura, the Black Widows. It seems like similar.
Yeah, you just put that up.
I checked your channel just before I went on air, but it was an interesting story because it kind of seemed very similar. Like they capitalize on people who obviously had somebody hurt or murdered or whatever in their family, and then they get these people who are angry and want revenge, and then they capitalize it and turn them into extremists. And for people who don't know the Black Widows, Laura, you mind expanding on?
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of a phrase that the media have created, really, but it refers to female suicide bombers largely based in the North Caucasus region of Russia. And that's a region where they're fighting an insurgency because they want to become an independent Islamic state that's separate from Russia. But it's really complex, and I couldn't really get into it in the video because I was sort of just talking about the women rather than the insurgency. But the Russian government have done some awful things to the people there, and these women that become these female suicide bombers, they're called the Black Widows because most of them have either lost their husband or a brother or a son or another close relative, and some of them had very extreme views before that happened, but lots of them became radicalized afterwards because of their grief, and they were ostracized by their communities, and they were treated awfully by the Russian government. Like the Russian government last year went round blowing up the homes of some women whose husbands had died in the insurgency. And that's part of, people don't really understand what motivates them to kill themselves at the moment, because not much research has been done on it, but that seems to be part of the driving force into what leads them to do something so extreme.
Yeah, and I'm sure I know obviously Russia did killed loved ones, and then that obviously was some motivation that some of these people. But I know Ron Paul said that our foreign policy, or in the American foreign policy, and probably same thing with Russia, it creates terrorists, because a lot of the times it's our invasion, you look, the first democratically elected president of Iran, we end up funding the rebels to take them down, and so it just like unfortunately we don't have long-term memory, but if you look at it, a lot of these, it seems like a lot of these issues are self-inflicted. It seems like well, the Chechenian thing, that's an interesting thing, because I don't know too much about it, but it seems like, why can't Russia just give them their corner and just be, give them their country, and that's it, obviously it's probably way more complicated than that, but, it is Putin, and he seems like a stubborn person, so, and actually Russia's another interesting story, just with all those protests that are going on, him locking up people for, gays and lesbians for protesting, and it seems like in a developed country, well, a somewhat developed country like Russia, to still be to be that little, not be progressive and not look at it, okay, well, agree with it or not, let these people, if they want to be gay, if they want to be lesbian, then let them do their thing. What's the big deal? I know Putin got angry because he said that when Obama was going to Russia, he has some meetings that he might have with some gay and lesbian protesters and groups and stuff like that, and he was all upset about that. And I just feel like, it's amazing when you do your research in other countries how many things are fucked up, it just how many things, just we live in this, I feel like, especially in America. I was born in Portugal, which isn't that far from you guys, and it seems like Europeans, or at least some people that I know that live in other countries, their perspective of the world is very different than our perspective here. It seems like when I leave the country, it seems like people have a better idea of what's going on in other countries and what's going on with the rest of the world. And it seems like in America, they do a really good job of, I don't know if some of it's kind of our arrogance of feeling like the world revolves around us, so we don't have to know what's going on with them. They should know what's going on with us. But it seems like, or maybe it is media. It's the fact that media kind of just sells us this point of view, and we're stuck in this debt where we're just, college gets you in debt early, then you work your whole life 9 to 5 to try, and you don't have time to do research. You don't have time to kind of ask questions, and so you kind of just put it on the news before you go to bed at night and kind of fed whatever they feed you, and you don't really know what's going on. But it definitely seems like there's tons of stories that should be talked about every day, and that, Fukushima, for example, there's barely been any news on Fukushima. That should be like one of the most important stories in the news, because I mean, this is going to affect everybody. It's going to affect, I mean, they're talking about it went up 3% radiation levels in like California. They're finding fish with more radiation and whatnot, which isn't a significant amount, but I mean, they don't know how to stop it. So that might never, that progression of radiation might not stop, and those type of stories are I feel like are important for, news to hit on and whatnot. And we don't. And that's why it's awesome to have, TruthLoader and other alternative places to kind of, get our news and stuff like that. And you guys brought up briefly the Design Geist movement. Do you think that we have to start from scratch, like do something like completely, like something like Design Geist movement? I know you had Jacques Fresco on one of your shows before, and that was
well back.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And he's a super interesting person, and I feel like it's kind of a stretch to think that we can change the way we look at the world and do something like that. But what other option do we have? I feel like we keep trying to modify something that doesn't really work. And they just came out with a statistic recently. I think I heard it yesterday. The 85 richest people in the world equal the 50% of the poorest people in the world. Like 85 people, equals that. That's insane. To think how.
Yeah, that was the stat from Oxfam. Like I read about that on Monday, and that's there's nothing you can do about that, right? There's the way the system is set up at the moment will always benefit those people at the top. And I can't remember. I saw a clip today of somebody on it was on a US network. I can't remember his name or which network it was, which is really annoying. But he was sort of going, "Oh, this is brilliant. This is perfect news. This is this shows that everything's working." Yeah. I was like, wow, how the hell can anybody think like that? And actually, I mean, the co-host was it? I don't know if he was a guest or a host, but like the person who was on screen with him was sort of quite skeptical about what he was saying. But
yeah, it was a female, right? Wasn't a female interviewing him, and she was looking at him. Yeah. She was like, "Are you serious? Like, are you really saying this?" It's insane. But I think when you're in power or when you're the wealthiest, like, I think your number one goal is to stay in power and stay the wealthiest. It's like we're having a lot of the debate about minimum wage and stuff like that, and people are like, "Oh, why should you pay people more?" and this and that. And and I'm not saying that one idea is better than others, but what I'm saying is I see Walmart making record profits, and I see people who work at Walmart get paid crap, and most of them, and a lot of people are like, oh, now they're that's how they hire people, they do this, they do that, but really the taxpayer ends up paying for what Walmart isn't, because most of these people are working part-time. They won't fully employ them full-time, so they don't have to pay for insurance and all these benefits or whatnot, and I think it's like some ridiculous amount of people from Walmart are on like government insurance. So basically Walmart's not paying them. but instead the taxpayers are paying for their insurance.
Yeah.
So
and then you're going into Walmart to buy everything from there as well, right?
yeah,
Paying twice.
and they have things like peasant insurance, where if you die while you're working, then they get like some money, because and then they have to go through the trouble of hiring somebody for your position and all these things, and it's just like, how do you feel bad for for these big corporations? And then you always hear these people talk about capitalism and the free market. And if we had a true, and I'm a Ron Paul fan, I think a lot of the things he says make sense. And but I'm not sure that the same way people who believe in the free market say that things like the Zeitgeist movement or the Venus Project wouldn't work. I'm not sure a completely free market will work either, because I almost feel like you need somebody for a line of defense against big corporations, because it goes back to Edward Bernays and manufacturing consent, like these people who they've learned how to manipulate people's point of views. Democracy works and free market works when people are getting the right information. Now, when a company gets big enough where they can influence what information you're getting or how you're getting it, then how do we make a logical decision on what's going on? We can't, So, on your opinion, do you feel like there's still hope that like we can some way modify things to kind of maybe still fix things, or do you think something like the Venus Project or the Zeitgeist movement, this whole idea of like a resource-based economy could work? Something and for people who don't know, I've talked about it on the air before, but it's kind of similar to going to a library or going to a gym. You kind of don't own anything. You kind of just use things as you need it, and then you continue. And I had Douglas Ruskoff on the last podcast, and he's a big believer of the fact that we probably have the technology and have had the technology where we could all work like 2 weeks out of the year, and everything could be automated, and I mean, that'd be awesome. I mean, we'd probably all be alcoholics, but but the thing is that like I feel like our focus is in the wrong place. When our focus is on making more money, then obviously we're not going to create technology to help to help make things easier, and that's not our focus. So what's your opinion on it? You think that there's some hope in fixing this kind of messed up system, or do you think that
gotta have some hope, right?
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, what's the point? But somebody's got to try it first, right? Somebody's actually, instead of just theorizing about all this stuff, somebody's got to set it up. And I think that would be the big challenge. Somebody's got to.
Switzerland. I know Switzerland had that thing where they were talking about just like a minimum wage not a minimum wage, but like a minimum income for everybody. Did you guys hear about that?
Oh yeah. We did do a story on that. So they were talking about what was it? Limiting corporate pay to or limiting executive pay to 12 times the lowest paid. And I mean, to me, that sounds like a fantastic idea, right? But they were, they voted against it.
They did, yeah. Because I heard about it when they were about to go, or when conversation sparked, and before they voted on. I didn't know if it passed or whatnot. But like you said, the idea sounds like it would make sense. Like if you take poverty away, and like if everybody got, I think the number was like $2,800. If everybody got $2,800, enough to survive. And then people are like, well, what would motivate people to work? Well, because that person who is motivated to work has a nicer car than you, has a bigger house than you, has nicer things, has more money to do more things. So that would be the incentive to do more. But you would eliminate poverty, which means you would eliminate a lot of crime, money in prisons, probably some drug abuse, because well, I don't know, actually, drug abuse, because maybe you have more time and more money, there might be more. I'm not sure, but I guess in theory it seems like it could work. I mean, you look at the Portugal thing, where they decriminalized all drugs. A lot of people thought that would never work. That idea was insane, and in Portugal, they tried it, and in theory it sounded like it was insane. So if you decriminalize everything, why wouldn't there be more drug abuse? But there wasn't, and so sometimes things in theory seems like it could go either or. It could go down the wrong route, but it could work. And like you said, we kind of need like a guinea pig to kind of try it, and then once they try it, then we kind of see if it works. But I don't think the Zeitgeist movement or whatnot is that far fetched. I think that you get a lot of libertarians and who say that, well, government's the issue. Government, if you took away government, then it's almost like the idea of you take away government, then corporations would kind of take care of everything else. And I mean, personally, I don't think that would work. I don't think that.
I don't know who I trust less, politicians or business leaders, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, but doesn't this go to like human nature? What causes people to be greedy and I mean, whatever causes corporations to be greedy and corrupt, isn't that same human nature of wanting more and wanting more power and money? Wouldn't that it's the same thing that happens to government? So I mean, really, they both are susceptible to the same temptations, right? To stay in power and get more power.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's that quote, I can't remember who said it. The whole absolute power, or was it power corrupts and absolute power corrupts? Absolutely. I can't remember who that's from. That's from like ages and ages and ages ago.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
But
Like,
yeah,
I'm always quoting people and never know who I'm quoting.
yeah, exactly. I'm sure. I mean, I did history at university. I'm pretty sure that's where I learned that. It was something to do with. Oh crap! I'm never gonna remember. I'm gonna go and Google that later.
But yeah, absolutely. I think that, and it's no different than like the kings and queens. I mean, I don't know what your opinion is on like the royal family and stuff like that, but it's
Get started on that.
Yeah.
no. Let's get started on that. I mean, doesn't it seem like the whole thing seems pretty insane, doesn't it? Like the idea that they just because you're born into this family, then well, if you ask David Icke, the reptilians, but if but the thing is that they're born in this family, and just because you're lucky enough to be born in this family, all of a sudden you're more privileged and you have this power. I mean, coming from the outside looking in, like, but it's amazing that even the U.S. public, when they had their first child or whatnot, like, it's amazing how interested we were.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's what I don't get. Like, I mean, if perfect world, just I'd have them out. But what amazes me is how interested people seem to be in, I mean, it's that story was woman has baby, and the year before it was man and woman get married, basically, and it turned into this huge global event, and it, it's stuff that happens every single day, and I mean, I don't understand it. I don't get why people are interested in it, but they seem to be.
I think it actually makes more sense that Americans would be interested, because at least they don't have to put up with knowing their taxpayers' money is going towards funding that wedding and things like that.
Yeah,
that's right. That's one thing they never even talked about. Like, and I was wondering that too. I'm like, isn't their taxpayer money going to funding all this crazy wedding? Because all they focused on was like what they were wearing, how much money things were, and I'm like the whole time I'm thinking like I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like, isn't there taxpayer? I'm like, if that was us, I mean, Obama does anything and spends any money on anything, and people just rip them, and I'm like, in the UK, it's just like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not our money, but it seems like we're obsessed with like gossip, it's like it seems like we love, people love gossip. They love the Bieber talk, they love the Duck Dynasty, the racist Southern lady who said something racist, and then that cook or whatever on TV. I don't know, because I don't follow any of this crap, but it just they love that stuff, and it's like that's what sparks conversation, and it's just like there's so much more going on, it's I mean, personally, like when I see certain stories, like I can't help but be angry, I can't help but not angry, but I mean, I guess motivated to kind of like next time I'm out with my friends, start conversation about it. I think we have this theory that like, oh, you should never talk about politics or religion with people. And I think that theory is wrong, because I think the only way you progress, the only thing you learn anything is from talking. It's from conversating. It's from
and sharing ideas.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, if I locked myself in a room and just was completely by myself and didn't have any reference point and didn't have anybody to talk to or share my ideas, I could convince myself of anything. I can convince myself that socialism is the best way or is the worst way, or communism is the best way or the worst way, or that the sky is purple. I could, but the thing about sharing ideas with people, I've been in the situation where I've had established opinion on something, but I'm not 100% sold on it. So, and then I'll spark the conversation with a couple of friends, then they'll make points that I haven't even I wasn't even looking at, and I didn't even think of, and I'm like, holy shit, that makes sense. Like, and if I didn't have this conversation, I would still be that idiot thinking that I was right with this opinion, and I think that's important. That's why, like, with all my ideas, I have this theory that it's just like none of my ideas are set in stone, because obviously you never have all the information, you've never seen all the point of views, so it's just like, personally I'm an atheist, but like, even with religion, I'm just like, I don't know, I could be wrong, I'm like, I'm crossing my fingers I'm not, but
hey, you're not there, yeah.
but it's just the idea, like, anytime somebody has like truth with a capital T, like they think that they're 100% right, then I think when you close off other opinions and other ideas, it's dangerous because you get a lot of like here, obviously we only have two parties, unfortunately, but or two major parties that get all the focus. But here it's just like once you pick a team, you're screwed, because it's like once I decide that I'm a Republican or a Democrat, once somebody else says an idea that doesn't agree with my party, all of a sudden I completely tone it off. I just shut it down. I don't listen, and it's not important to me. And I already have the rebuttal talking point to kind of disagree with you. It's like the global warming thing. It's like it's with everything. It's like, let's just look at the facts. Is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? And that's what we should look at. I think maybe it's like we're still tribal hunter-gatherers people. We like to be a part of community, but if you look at like the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention, you have all these people and like you have these politicians saying their speeches, and most of them are just like the same old BS you hear on every interview. But then after every line, people are standing up clapping and they're so excited. And I'm like they haven't said anything significant. I'm like, well, but it's just like, I think you're like, it's no different than being at a concert and like everybody's kind of in that mindset, and it's like that experience of everybody being together. And I think there's something about like being hunter-gatherers that are like, being tribal people, that we still enjoy being a part of a group, and unfortunately that kind of, I think, restricts us from looking at other ideas and other points of views. And in the UK, you guys have multiple parties, and
yeah, but I mean, it's kind of, I mean, we've got two major ones. I mean, there are a lot more there are a lot more parties than you have in the States, but it's still dominated by two. I know we have a coalition at the moment, but I mean, one of them, the Lib Dems would never get into power on their own. And it kind of, you notice these cycles. So you'll have Labour voted in for a few years, and they'll implement a few changes, and then the Tories will come in and they'll implement a few changes, and it just goes round and round and round. So you'll have bigger government, less government, bigger government, less government. It's kind of, and everybody comes out. I think that's why people are so sick of politicians over here at the moment, so apathetic. Is that you're given all these promises that they're going to fix everything and make everything perfect for you, and that's impossible. And I think people would have a lot more respect for them if they just came out and said, look, we're gonna do our best, but we're never gonna make everything perfect. I think people would trust them a lot more if they were a bit more honest with, a bit more realistic maybe with their goals.
Do you think some of it is the fact that they go in really wanting to make a difference and really wanting to change things, and then once they get in power, they realize, like, I don't have any say in anything. Like, there's already a plan established. There's other, people pulling the strings. Or do you think that, like, they're just trying to get voted and they know they have no power and they don't really care about making a difference, and they're just kind of selling us BS?
I think the first of what you just said definitely happened with Obama. I don't know. I genuinely.
I was sold.
And I still hope inside that he is genuinely a nice guy and that he did have good intentions. But as soon as he got voted in, he realized
he turned into President Bush. I mean, you put white skin and gray hair on him, and he's a Republican. I mean, he's like. It's amazing how, and the thing is too, is like so many people got, and I was sold. I remember when he first became president, he told his first speech, I'm like, holy shit, I'm like, this is gonna be a huge change in American foreign policy in the world. I'm like, it's just because obviously Bush did such a crappy job that I'm like, we're only hoping that it could only get better, and I kind of similar to what he said. Like, it seems like one party gets in power, then we think like, okay, this guy sucks, we need to get, let's choose the other party because this guy did an awful job. Then that party does a bad job, then we choose the other party. We just keep going back and forth, and neither of them ever make a difference. And they're just mild differences. But it was amazing how quickly Obama turned into, basically every other president, and how
Have you ever seen that sketch? I don't know if it was either Bill Hicks or Doug Stanhope. I can't remember who it was. He was talking about Kennedy getting voted in.
And then watching the film.
Voted in, he's taken into, or no, somebody else gets voted in, and they're taken into a room and shown footage from behind the grassy knoll. I don't know. It's a brilliant sketch. I can't remember again. Can't remember who did it, but
No, it was Bill Hicks. It was similar to what you said. It was something along the lines like, once you become president, you go in there, you're all motivated to make a difference, but once you become president, they show you this one, they take you into some secret room. They show you an angle of the JFK murder nobody's seen, where you basically see that he was shot by agent, and then they're like, oh, any questions? And and that's basically what happens, and so it seems like something like that does happen, because I mean, either Obama's a amazingly good BSer, or like Laura said, like, he honestly did have good intentions, and once he got in power, basically he realized I have no say. I mean, a lot of these advisors they have, a lot of them don't change. Like, they have a lot of the same advisors. They have, a lot of these things don't change. So it's just like, even though you have a different president, like, the people, making or helping make decisions, a lot of them are the same. You had Henry Kissinger, who helped Republicans and Democrats. I mean, he didn't, it didn't matter, and foreign policy didn't really change. And so I wonder how, I mean, the only things that change are like the talking points, like gay marriage, religion, all these things that don't really matter, like, or at least don't really change anyways, and it just seems like that's just what used to separate people. I know people who voted for Bush just because he was religious, and he was anti-abortion, and anti-gay marriage, and I'm like, really? I'm like, are we voting for, who are we voting for? I'm like, he's that's not important. What's important is foreign policy, what he's going to do with taxes, regulation, and all these things. Those are the things that are important. But it's like, you're choosing somebody based on their religious beliefs, but it's like, what happened to separation of church and state? Like, the idea should be that no matter what you believe in, as long as, we all have the right to pursue happiness, and as long as you're not harming somebody else's right to pursue happiness, then people should have the right to do whatever they want. That's kind of the way I look at it. And in the UK, it seems like Blair is just as hated as Bush is here. I just heard a story recently about somebody trying to citizens arrest him.
Yeah, in a restaurant over here. That was brilliant.
What happened? Because I just briefly skimmed over it. I didn't get to read the article.
Yeah, so he was out having dinner somewhere I think it was in London.
It's a tram shed, quite a hipster restaurant actually, which is strange.
And was it one of the waiters came up to him or it was somebody who was in the restaurant came up to him and threatened, tried to arrest him and said, like, come with me to a police station. And then Blair kind of just said, Saddam was evil. We did the right thing getting rid of him. He spouted his usual line. And then the guy who tried to make the citizens arrest just sort of scarpered as quickly as he could, I think.
I think people were the staff of the restaurant tried to, like, grab him.
Yeah.
So he ran away.
But I mean, stuff like that. I mean, not necessarily with citizens arrest, but Blair gets heckled a lot here. Every time he makes a speech, there'll be somebody in there who will accuse him of being a war criminal, and will rightly question what his intentions were in going into Iraq. And it happens a lot. Just, he doesn't often speak in public over here. Sorry.
I don't know, I was just going to say he sort of seems to try and hide away now.
Yeah, although he's still making a hell of a lot of money from it. He made £13 million last year, apparently.
Doing what?
Public speaking, not necessarily in the UK, but he was did a lot of talks, business consultancy.
Yeah.
And possibly the worst one, he's a Middle East peace envoy. Which is kind of a bit of hell.
Ironic.
Yeah. I mean, all sorts. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies.
Yeah. Well, it seems like he's like your Bush. I mean, it's like, we didn't realize that, like, when we were being sold the Iraq War, you guys were being sold the Iraq War. Bush's family was profiting off it. Blair was profiting off it. Like, it was very much a similar situation. And the people now, like, looking back, have basically everybody come to the agreement that, like, okay, it was a mess up. Because here, that's what it seems. It seems even Republicans or conservatives or people who agree with that, who agreed with going in, can look back now and say, okay, we messed up. But it's like, we do that, but then, like, we're quickly to say, hey, but at least oil prices didn't go up or whatever, this and that. But it's just like the private contractors are the ones who made out. I mean, it didn't help us one bit, and
Yeah, yeah. I actually, do you know what? Just going back to your comparison, I'd say that your Obama is your Blair.
really,
And yeah, because when Blair
he's
came
a
in, it was
better
such
talker.
it was such huh?
But he's a better talker because Bush was an awful talker. I mean,
Yeah.
he was mildly retarded. He was.
So we had a conservative government for 20 years, and there was pretty big social change, and everything had gone to the right, in terms of the political spectrum, and then there was this whole sort of relaunching of the Labour Party, and it was all done under Blair, and he's incredibly charismatic, and promising all these positive changes, and he did, to give him his dues, like he did bring about some of those changes, and there were certain things that definitely improved over here under New Labour, but there are other things like Iraq being the major one that you just sort of look at it and go, I can't believe they did that. So yeah, I guess with Obama, he was promising all these changes, and then he's going off and launching drone strikes all over the world, and getting the Nobel Peace Prize. That's the
Yeah, that was crazy. That was before he even did anything. I mean, that was
exactly.
That was even before I disliked him. I'm like, even when he,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, he got it, but I'm like, what do you get it for? He didn't do anything yet. I'm like, he just gave us a bunch of empty promises that he hasn't fulfilled yet, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of, do you know what? I mean, he's been such a disappointment. Because with the promising to close down Gitmo and close down. And I mean, I don't understand Obamacare. I don't want to get into the politics in the US, right? But I mean, to us, it seems strange that that people would turn down the opportunity to have healthcare provided for them. But that's maybe because we've got the NHS over here. I don't know. It's a complicated one. Probably best not to get into that.
Do you guys have universal healthcare?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's
For
problems
most
with
part.
it. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But,
Well, Canada.
think,
Yeah, Canada also has universal healthcare. And it seems like it works there.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's problems. People don't get left untreated. There's no. If somebody's brought into a hospital with their leg broken, it will get fixed, whether or not they have private health insurance. Yeah, I think I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want that, but.
Well, I think it's the idea that like the government is forcing you to get something, and there's a lot of talk about how insurance companies had a big hand in writing that, and a lot of insurance companies are going to profit from it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense why insurance prices would go up. A lot of people are saying, well, Obamacare is going to raise insurance prices. Just logically, I mean, again, I'm not too informed with it, but I just think it only makes sense that if more people have this type of service, then prices would go down. So if 80% of the U.S. or 75% of the U.S. has my service, insurance, health insurance, then I give one price. But now that 100% of the U.S. has to have health insurance, then why wouldn't prices go down? I almost feel like it's insurance companies are just finding a reason to raise prices. Now they're blaming Obamacare and saying, "Oh, prices have to go up because of this and because of that," but that's the thing. That's another story that it's like my opinion is not established yet because there's too much information, and it's just like you're not sure like what's really going on. Like if again, and we've lost so much trust in our politicians here, that I almost feel like they can't be doing it because they care about healthcare. I mean, they must be doing it because somebody's making money, because somebody's profiting, and that's what scares me. That's why I tend to believe, okay, universal healthcare, there's countries that have it, and it seems like it works. It's not perfect, but our healthcare system now sucks, so it could be an improvement. But if they're pushing for this, who's profiting? And that's kind of a scary thing, because it's like we've gotten to the point where we've lost so much faith in government that basically we start questioning everything. And it's just like almost, at least from my point of view, I almost feel like everything that they're doing, there's another incentive. I mean, you look at Syria, okay? They talked about chemical weapons, and do they really care about chemical weapons? Probably not. I mean, that fight with there's been deaths and bloodshed for years there, and we haven't once talked about it in mainstream media. All of a sudden, and I don't know what it was, but for some incentive, all of a sudden they try to sell that war. And like in a month period, you just saw tons of video, you saw tons of interviews, you saw, tons of politicians saying we must go in there, McCain saying we have to get in and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it was just like
McCain wants to go into every country though, doesn't he? I mean, he's
first of all, anybody who's been tied up for that long, he's not. He went through some shit when being tied up. There's a reason why he can't do the YMCA. It's like he was he was tied up for quite a bit. So it's just like he can't be sane. It's just but again, you're right. He is just one of those guys who wants to invade everybody. And it's weird because usually you meet veterans and they see war firsthand and they want to stray away from it, because it seems like you meet a lot of people who, because the thing about us, like I think our best example is Vietnam. Like when Vietnam happened, people saw pictures and interviews and saw what was really going on. And people, when you see the actual, because right now, if we're in a war, we hear the word war, but we don't see the violence, we don't see the bloodshed, we don't see the families that are torn apart, and what war really is. And I think it's beneficial towards the country, because what ends up happening is that basically we can just say, hey, we're in this war, but I'm going on with my everyday life, so who cares, But I think Vietnam, when there were still journalists that were getting their information and stories out, we saw how big of a mess up that was, and because of it, people protested and people got angry about it, and I think that's a big issue. I think that's I know when during the Iraqi war, Bush said that he didn't want to film any of the caskets coming from but and I had like mixed feelings about it. In a way, I felt like, okay, I do understand the idea that you want to respect the families, but in another way, it's like, I'm not sure those were his intentions. I think that's what he told us, but I think his true intentions were for people not to really put the word war with deaths and bloodshed and casualties and stuff like that. I feel like he wanted to separate us from it, and
yeah,
so,
I mean, he wants it to look positive, right? I mean, it's kind of, I think it's really interesting at the moment with what's going on in Syria. It's the first real war where you can go online and see the horrific violence, right? And it's being committed by both sides. Whatever anybody tells
absolutely,
you, there's war crimes going on that are being carried out by the opposition and by the Syrian Arab Army and all the players in the war. And it's the first one where you can just go onto YouTube and watch these disgusting things going on, and they're really, really disturbing, and I think one of the things, I don't know what happens in the States, but one of the things over here is the news is not allowed to show the moment of death, and there's kind of taste and decency rules and stuff like that where they're not allowed to show anything too gory, and I can see the point in that, because you don't want to sort of psychologically harm anybody at home, but at the same time, if people knew that that's what it looks like, then there'd be a lot less cheerleading for war, a lot fewer people who would support the war, and I don't know. I think that's, again, like coming back to the internet. I think that's one of those things that YouTube has allowed people to do, is just connect directly with the war, and see what it's really like.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's a huge problem. I think it's a big issue, the fact that we don't. I mean, I agree that, like, obviously, if you don't want it to go too over the top where there's just dead bodies everywhere, and then you don't know if there's kids watching or whatnot. But I feel like we do need some imagery. We need to see some of it, because if not, then a war becomes just a three-lettered word, and it doesn't mean anything to us. It's just like, oh, we're in a war, great, but it doesn't affect me. And I think that I talk to a lot of veterans, and I have a couple buddies that fought Vietnam, and it's like their point of view of war compared to the average person. I know Jesse Ventura calls them chicken hawks, the politicians, because he's like, when it was their turn to serve, they were chickens, and now when they send other people's families and kids, they're hawks. But it seems like people who actually were there and see what war really is, they do, it's because they saw it that makes them, war should be a last resort. I feel like anytime there's a conflict or any type of issue, like sending you know, innocent people to war, it should be an absolute last resort. It should be, you know, the last thing we do. But I think because we're so detached from it, and I think drones is another thing. Like the drone issue, I think is the fact that now people in the military are detached from it. Now it's like, if I'm just like, it's gonna feel like playing a PlayStation and then I'm just killed people and that's it. You know, like these people in the military aren't gonna really, they can be detached from it, you know, where they don't actually see the bloodshed or whatnot. And I think that's a huge issue, you know. But like you said, the beautiful thing about the internet is you can end up going online, see things yourself. But unfortunately, you know, there's not, I feel like there should be, I wish more people would. I think we are very much distracted. It seems like America's done a great job of like, so we care more about what people, you know, what people have and material things and whatnot, and then we're so focused on that we don't really care about news and politics and not. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but the other thing too is that we put people in debt early. Like our school systems aren't great, and then you kids come out of college, they're in debt, which means they have to work their whole lives. Then they start a family, and they don't really have time to kind of you know, research or kind of gather what's going on or whatnot. And that's why I love TruthLoaders, because I recommend you guys all the time, because I'm just like, listen, I know you don't have time to watch the documentary I want you to watch, but these guys have like a great 4-minute video about this. I'm like, check it out and whatnot. So
well, thanks for recommending us, dude. That's
yeah,
it's very nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so I don't want to hold you guys up too long. We've been talking for
I was just gonna say, Sam's calling me. I think I have to check one of his videos. So
So, well, I just want to thank you guys for being with me and for having the conversation. It was awesome, and definitely check out TruthLoaders. Is there any videos or any stories you guys are hitting up soon that's coming up on your channel?
I've got one that I'll probably put up tomorrow. It's done, but on how Israel got the nuclear bomb, and it's a weird story because it's still a secret.
They still pretend they don't have it.
So officially, I mean, there's a guy called Mordecai Vanunu, who blew the whistle on Israel's nuclear program in 1986, and yet it's still an official secret. It's a really bizarre story, but there's a lot of parallels with what everybody's telling us is going on in Iran. So kind of, it's not a news story, but it's just an interesting story, you know. So I mean, that might be up tomorrow.
Well, I think it's those type of stories that make sense of current events, because I think like when you do research on those other stories, a lot of things that happen now make sense. You know, like why people don't like each other, you know, conflicts that happened in the past and whatnot. And so I think stories like that are important. You know, so
yeah. And
definitely check out that story, that video that just came out today that I talked about. What was it, the Black Widows or definitely check. That just came out today, so hit that up. And thanks again, guys, for being with me. It was awesome to talk to you guys. And now go have some shots and drink, because I know you guys.
It's too early.
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe a bit.
I've got a 30th birthday tonight, so I think I'm going to be a bit of a mess tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's why we decided to do the interview today. And I got a comedy show that I'm going to tonight too. So I'm like, you know what, if we can both do it Friday, you know, today, definitely let's do it today before we try to be intelligent sounding tomorrow and sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks again, guys. Enjoy your Friday night, and thanks again for being with me. And hopefully we can have you guys on again.
Cheers, Ricky.
Hey, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.